10 years ago, I was sitting on the floor of my office and I was filling envelopes. And I had a ministry. It's called Educational Christian Ministries. And what I would do is give people free computer training. Yes, free computer training to people who needed it, who really needed it to work. We didn't have a government grant or anything like that. We were just doing it because it needed to be done. It's a duty of religion. Love God and love your neighbor as yourself. Well, my neighbors had some needs, so I was meeting the need. There was a catch. I had a little sermonette every 2-hour session. 10 minutes was for my soapbox time, and it was really exciting, and it changed lives in many ways. It's very good. Now, the story is, though, how I survive in this is I would send out newsletters telling people this is what I'm doing, and I'm going to continue doing it. I would love it if you would participate with me by sending some funds. And I think I had about 135 people on a news list that I was sending these newsletters to. And I had a suspicion that there was at least 35 of them that I could think of that probably didn't want to hear about it, that just were not interested. They thought I had gone too kooky and I was putting my family at risk doing this strange deed, and it just didn't make sense to them. So every newsletter was sort of an irritant. At the same time, because you are living on the edge and you don't know when your next resource for your meal or your phone bill or whatever, you don't know when it's going to come or how it's going to come. I was grumbling. I was whining about my job. I knew I was doing the obedience to Almighty God thing, but I was getting just really irritated about it. And I was whining, and how come I have to do all this? Well, I'm sending out these newsletters to people who are irritated by me. It doesn't matter whether what I'm doing is right or wrong or whatever. They're just irritated. And why am I sending newsletters to people that don't like me? And I was whining. That's what it was. And I was whining out loud. I was by myself, I was talking to God. And one of the things that I understood was that I had been given a task and I was supposed to do it without whining. If you've ever worked for somebody, you've had somebody work for you, you like it when you give them a task and they do it without grumbling. And there's a proverb, most people have never heard this. It says, like smoke to the eyes and vinegar to the teeth, so is the sluggard to those who send him. So those of you in the Navy use the term sluggard a lot. There's some Navy listeners in our audience. Like smoke to the eyes and vinegar to the teeth, so is the sluggard to those who send him. You know what? We're not supposed to be sluggards to Almighty God, but I was grumbling in my ministry tasks. And then finally, when I finally came to my senses and I realized that I had a bad attitude, I was doing things wrong. I had reason to feel guilty, and I needed to change my attitude and grow up a little bit. I finally said, okay, God, I'll do it. And, I was really impressed that the people that were on my list to send newsletters there, the Lord, when I was in my right mind, had inspired me to put those people on the list. So, as my Commodore used to say when I was in the Navy, stick to the plan. We came up with it when we were all of a sound mind, so stick to the plan. So I realized I was going to stick to the plan, but nevertheless, I had one last grumble. And I said this out loud. And I said, but God, I don't even have money to buy the stamps. And it was a serious, I don't know if you've ever whined and can empathize with me, but I was really just almost screaming. I don't even have money for the stamps. And I didn't. And I was counting the cost of every envelope. Every envelope was going to cost me ultimately about 90 cents after the printing and stamps and everything like that. And so I was grumbling, and then my daughter opens the door just a few minutes after that, and she knew I was in a bad mood, and my office was not the place to go, but she had gone to the front door, and the mail came in, and she met the mailman at the door, and she got the mail, and something inspired her. She knew she was supposed to bring this mail to me. She also knew that it wasn't a very pleasant atmosphere inside my office, but she knew that whatever it was inspired her to go into my office over, basically it was a stronger sense to do that than it was to protect her own safety going in a place where Dad's not in a good mood. So she goes in the office and she hands the stuff to me. She says, I thought you might need this. And she hurriedly skips out of the office, closes the door. And so I was sitting there, I had bad attitude, horrible attitude. And I said to myself, since when is it an emergency to read the mail? And I just, oh man, David, you have got the worst attitude. You need to just get a grip and fix yourself, man. So, yeah, okay. So I'm kind of praying while I'm sitting there, so I stop doing the envelope thing, stuffing envelopes, and I turned to the mail, and it was junk mail, and then there was this thing that looked like, those thank you cards. It was a small envelope, almost square instead of rectangular. And I thought, well, who knows what this is? I open it up, and I open it up, and I'm thinking, oh, maybe this will be my salvation. I'll have money in it or something, and I open it up, and there were books of stamps. There were books of stamps. Just literally within 2.5 minutes prior to that, I was whining, and I said, I don't even have the money to buy stamps. And somebody sent me stamps. Now, I confronted this person a few days later and said, I told him the whole story. I was probably a little bit more gruesome than I am here on the radio about talking about how really bad my attitude was. But I told the person the whole situation, what I was dealing with, my prayer, my complaint, and my big whine about not even having money for stamps. And when I told the lady what had happened, she fainted. I mean, it was physically, she just went, oh. And she was so relieved. And she said, I am so glad. I was so embarrassed. I just really sensed that God wanted me to send you some money. You needed some help. And then just before I started putting it together, God spoke to me and said, send him stamps. And I'm thinking, and she says, it had to be God. That was and I told myself, well, he can use money to buy stamps if that's what he really needs. And she just all of a sudden felt like she'd be in sin if she did anything but send stamps. And so what she did is she'd never had this happen to her before, but she sent stamps. And see, folks, I tell that story because this is the Faith and Freedom Show. I say our freedom will come in proportion to our faith. We do a lot of things based on pragmatism. We're going to be talking about issues of the day, a bit how pragmatism affects them. In fact, this case up in Fredericksburg, the city council was being pragmatic. They decided to be pragmatic. Well, we use pragmatism because we're fearful. And we really don't believe that there's a sovereign creator of heaven and earth who will intervene in our affairs, is able to give us direction in the way we should go, no matter what our silly mindsets.